to story time. So today, like always on Fridays, we started this new thing on the Burr Cash Flow Investors, which was like, why not share some interesting experiences, interesting things that either happened in my life personally, or people that I know that hopefully either we can laugh at, draw some sort of an inspiration from. Either it's a teaching lesson to learn from, or hopefully you can pick up something to learn from it. And as I was thinking today, right, I'm like, what do I talk about? I was just busy all day, and I'm like, okay, what is a story that would be inspiring, that would be something fun, and that is real, right? And we're thinking about doing, maybe kind of going through some of the interesting things that happen as you get into real estate, as you start building a business and that sort of a thing. And I was racking my brain, and then I thought about this one particular story that I kind of heard, and it's somebody's life story, kind of coming to America sort of a thing, and something interesting happened. So I want to maybe relate this experience, and I'll call this, it's just 5 more minutes, right? Because a lot of times when things are going on in our lives, it is about just 5 more minutes, right? It's hanging on 5 more minutes when you want to give up, when you're like, oh my God, this is it. This is the end of it, and I just can't take it anymore, and we quit, right? And sometimes the consequences are that you walk away from success right around the corner. We've all heard kind of stories like that. So this is a kind of a, I don't know if you call a story. This is a real life experience of somebody I know. So the guy's name, before we get started, Burr Cash Flow Investors, make sure if you're not a member, become a member, invite your friends, family, and help us grow and help the whole real estate community grow. So this particular story is going to be short for today, but I want to relate it to you because this is by a real estate agent that I used to have a huge amount of respect for, and his name is Froy Candelario. So Froy Candelario, for the longest time, worked in California, and at one time he was the top #1 agent in the country in terms of number of sales, right? One guy alone, not doing new construction, not doing any with a mega team or anything. One guy, 3 assistants, and is closing something like 500 deals a year. So this is kind of that particular story. So as I relate this, he calls it, life is, Andrew, just about 2 more minutes, right? It's just about 2 more minutes. So Froy is somebody that grew up in Mexico and grew up south part of Mexico somewhere, and extremely, extremely poor, right? And to the extent that he didn't have any parents, so his orphan in terms of him and his sister is how they grew up. And as he's grew up in Mexico, obviously he sees a lot of people coming to America, and it's the land of opportunity, right? And this is a time in his life when he is about 13, 14 years old. And literally, if you've ever been to a country that is extremely poor, I got to see this in India as a kid, right? You have little kids on the street, literally fighting for food, right? Dumpster diving for food that people threw away. Literally, it's not like dumpsters like here. It's not as here I would call it sanitary compared to what the conditions exist in some of these parts of the world. Like literally, he was living on the street. And he decides that he's going to basically cross the border and come from Mexico to the United States. And as he relates this experience, he gets caught. And he got caught almost 11 times, literally. And so the obvious question would become well, Froy, why would you keep getting caught? If you keep getting caught, why do you keep trying to cross the border? He said, well, the great part about getting caught with the immigration agents, especially on this side, is that number one, they're nice to you in America. And number two, that before they let you go, they feed you. They give you coffee, they give you donuts, you get food to eat. So he's like, it's actually not that bad, because at least I was getting, while a couple of days I was in detention, I was getting a couple good square meals, right? And this, for a kid that is 13 or 14 years old, was a big deal at the time, right? For most of us, we can't even relate to that sort of circumstance, right? I mean, I've been poor in my life. I've slept in my car literally for 6 months, right? And this is, you've heard that story before. I'm not going to repeat that today, but not, and I will say this for sure. I was poor at that point by choice, because I could have gotten a job, and I was trying to get into real estate, selling real estate, and I was not willing to get a job. I wanted to make a go of this career. If I had to redo it over again, I would have done it a little bit differently, made it easier on myself. But anyways, that's besides the point. Today, it's not about me. Today, I'm trying to tell Freud's story, right? And the interesting part was this, that Freud is literally trying to cross. Every time he crosses, he gets caught. And the interesting part was, finally they decide that there is a train that comes from Mexico into US, right? Now, I don't know if this is still the case today, but at the time, this was the case. And obviously, it's a train where people are going to try to get on. It's going to be an immigration issue. So obviously, they're going to get stopped on the border. The immigration agents, the police, whoever it is, with dogs, they're going to search the whole train, check everybody's papers, and he has no papers, right? And so what they did was they finally figured out that some people would get underneath the carriage of the train and hold on. So you're basically grabbing the undercarriage of the train. Imagine this, right? Because if you're between two compartments, they're going to see you, right? And they're clearly doing patrol, because they know people try to sneak across. They're going to try to hide somewhere, be it the bathrooms, be it this, that, whatever the case may be, right? So the agents are well versed with this. So it's him and his best friend, right? Both of them have been trying to cross back and forth, and finally they've come up with this idea where they can hide underneath the train. So imagine this, the train is moving and you're basically stuck to the bottom of it, right? I mean, and this is no kind of, one of those James Bond movies, or this is real life, right? This is not like Tom Cruise, climbing at a building. This is, you're hanging over there. So I would imagine, as he tells it, he's got his foot brace somewhere and they're hanging on, because you have the train, right? We have all seen a train, and then you have, this is the ground, and it's not flat ground, it's all the big gravel that you have. So they're hiding underneath to hide from the immigration's agents, because they're walking around with their dogs. And literally, as this immigration agent is kind of coming towards them gradually, and they're like, oh my God, we're going to again get caught. And because the last time they got caught, what they did is they saw both of these kids get caught. So they had taken them and they put them way south in Mexico on a bus. And they basically let them go there, because they had to let them go, right? They're minors. So it's not like they can put them in jail. And so literally, these two friends, they get on a bus and ride it all the way back to the border, and they've had a 3 or 4 day journey getting kicked off the bus and so on and so forth. So now they're really hoping they're going to be able to make it across the United States. And right as when the immigration agent is coming up with the dog, what happens is the train starts moving. And the train starts moving, and they're like, oh my God, we're saved, right? This is so great, because we're going to be on the other side of the border, and we know where the next stop is, right? The next stop is not that far. And as the train starts moving, literally, what they haven't counted on, because what they had thought was that, hey, once the immigration agents pass by, we're going to basically let go. The train is not moving yet, and we're going to go hide between the two compartments, right? The space that is in between. We're going to stand there, and once we kind of get on the other side, we can basically slip away. This was their plan. But now they're underneath the train, and the train is picking up more and more and more speed. I mean, I don't know what the distance is between the undercarriage of the train and between the tracks, right? And that is a rough surface, right? That's basically, and now it's 20 miles, 40 miles, 60 miles, 80 miles, whatever it is, it's clearly you can't just let go, right? I mean, you're going to get mangled. So it's picking up more and more and more and more speed, right? It happens. And after a while, they're hoping that on the other side, that it's not that far where it stops again for another check before basically it gets on its real way. So they're like, well, it's not that far. But when you're hanging on underneath the train, right? And clearly your weight is on your arms, how long are you going to be able to hang on like this, right? Flat like this. So they have their feet wedged, but their chest and their head, they got to protect that. So they're trying to pull it as tight as possible. And after a little bit, both the kids are basically, I mean, they're clearly feeling the pressure because they can't hang on much longer. I mean, the train is barely out of the yard as it's picking up speed, and they're trying to hang on. And at some point, Freud's friend starts crying, and they're underneath the thing, and he's like, I can't hang on, I can't hang on, I can't hang on, right? And he, at some point, and Freud's like, no, you got to hang on. It's just 2 more minutes. It's 2 more minutes. At some point, this young kid, that's his friend, literally lets go. And as soon as it lets go, I don't have to describe what happens. What happens, obviously, is his head hits the gravel, and boom, right? All the, blood and guts, whatever you want to call it, come on Freud, and Freud is still hanging on, crying, because this is his best friend when you're 13, 14 years old at that time. And guess what happens? Literally 2 minutes later, the train stops. And the way Freud became the #1 agent in the United States, right? Making, I mean, literally millions and millions of dollars. And I'm talking about this about when I was 21 years old, I met Freud, right? So this is almost 26 years ago, right? 26, almost, something like that. And because he always used to say, listen, you can always hang on. Doesn't matter how tough life gets, you can always hang on 2 more minutes, because it's just about 2 more minutes, because most of us let go a little bit too soon. He's like, if my friend had hung on 2 more minutes, the train stopped, and I'm alive today. And whenever somebody would ask Freud, hey man, how do you succeed? He's like, I'm willing to outwork the other person, because every time I'm tired, every time I don't want to do something, I just tell myself it's just 2 more minutes. And the first time I ever met Freud was when I went to, so I used to go to a real estate coach, meaning a coach for real estate sales by the name of Mike Ferry. You guys have heard me talk about that sometime. And so I used to follow kind of what he says. Hey, this is how you sell a lot of real estate, right? I mean, I didn't know, I'm like 20 years old trying to sell real estate, and I'm struggling at best, right? And so, I mean, I barely could make a living selling real estate because I was scared. I had a thick accent, and I didn't know what to say, right? I had no tools. At the time, obviously, you don't have all the things, training, this, that, all the stuff you have today. Maybe with internet, you didn't have all these things. And so I remember going and shadowing Freud, where you go to his office and he's like, you're going to meet, I'm like, what time do you start work? He's like, 6:30. I'm like, you're in the office at 6:30? He's like, 6:30 sharp, otherwise I'm gone, right? 6:30 in the morning. Like, I'm not an early riser, but believe me, I was there 6 o'clock in LA, right? And I'm like, what do I do? He's like, be in a suit. And this is in LA, in a suit, right? I mean, can you imagine this, right? And all we're doing from literally 6:30, whatever, it was 5 minutes away from his office that we drove. And then we get out, and literally from almost like maybe 7 o'clock till 12:30, right? We're door knocking on people's things. And all he would say is Buenos Aires for anybody that was, he thought was Hispanic, and he knew who the people lived there. Every single day, this man, every single day, from 7 o'clock in the morning till about 12:30, 1 o'clock, every single day, he would just go and door knock on people's doors to get a listing. Do you want to sell your house? Or with Hispanic people talking Spanish, hey, do you want to buy or sell your house? I'm Freud Condlerio, right? And everybody was like, oh, this is stupid. Who's going to give you a listing if you go knock on their doors? He, without the MLS, they kicked him out of the MLS because they thought he was doing something wrong, right? Because who can do this much business? And he would basically not only front end and back end, if you guys understand real estate sales, he would do dual agencies on both listings. So he was control the buy side and the sales side of the business. Literally, I walked with him till 12:30 that day, right? And obviously he was much older than me. I'm 20 or 21 years old at the time. I thought I was going to die. Like literally, I thought I was going to drop dead, right? And I'm like, now what do you do? He's like, well, from 1 o'clock till 1:30 is lunchtime. Then I'm like, what do you do? He's like, well, from 1:30 till 2, he's like, I go to the office, I have a shower in the office, I change, I take a shower, I change, I put on a new suit. I'm like, then what happens? He's like, well, then we have 5 offices right next to each other. Room 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. He's like, remember the people we talked to in the morning? They're going to start coming in and they have appointments. And he had 3 assistants and they would put the person in room number 1, room number 2, 3, each person. Freud would walk in. He's like, hey, folks, nice to meet you. We're going to list your house for X amount. Right? He would give them the price. And if they said yes, he would basically say, okay, sign here. And he would move over to the next office, and repeat the process. Right? This was his way of getting, unheard of in the real estate industry at the time. And literally that day at 12 o'clock, I thought I was going to die. Literally. I go back to the hotel, I go to sleep, and at about 3:30, 4 o'clock, I wake up and come back to watch his operations. He works about 6:30 in the office and leaves. At this time, this is in LA, right? I'm 20 years old, and I see him driving a Rolls Royce, right? And I was like, how is this possible? It was possible because his one belief was, it's only about 2 more minutes. Because if you could hang on just 2 more minutes. And one more thing he used to always say, it's like, Andrew, succeeding in life is easy. All you have to do is just get 1% better. Just 1%. Tomorrow, if you're 1% better than today, you'll make a big difference. The day after, if you're just 1% better than the day before, right? And the reason I wanted to relate that story is that a lot of times, all of us have been in a place where we just feel, oh, I need to quit. I don't want to do this anymore. This is too painful. This is not working, right? And what we have to remind ourselves is the story that I told you of Freud Candelario. And that is that life, a lot of times, is just about hanging on just 2 more minutes. Because as Freud said, that if his friend had hung on 2 more minutes, he would be with Freud today. And for those 2 minutes, because he could not hang on and he gave up, right? He lost his life. I hope you find that inspirational. I hope you find that you relate to some ways in your life to some minutes that we have all had where we either gave up or we persevered through just for 2 more minutes. This is Andrew. Thanks a bunch and talk to you guys soon.